What's up, you guys? This is movie critic Rob here with the movie channel. My studio slash room is going through a little bit of a remodeling phase, so I apologize in advance. But I wanted to talk to you guys partially because there's not really a lot of movies coming out that I wanted to go see. There is Dark Tower, which I do plan on seeing soon. But I wanted to take this time to do some videos, and one of the filmmaking, I guess you could call them corners of the filmmaking world, is the Christian movie industry. Now, the name Christian movie industry already, I think, denotes a certain category, I guess, or a certain quality of movie in your mind. And I want to use this video to kind of shatter the perception of the Christian movie genre and show you what it could be and what could be changed so that we don't see it as something different. Because I think that a Christian movie, although it is a Christian type of media, and I'm coming at this from a Christian perspective. I'm a Christian. I've saved, born again. I'm coming at this from the perspective of these forms of media can be used for outreach. And I think largely, not all, but largely, the Christian movies that most are pumping out today only service the Christian community, which is not a bad thing, but I don't think they realize that being a movie and not a sermon, they could have the potential to reach millions and millions of people with a great message, and because of the way they choose to tackle the subject matter, it can be a little bit off-putting. And I think that, again, being a form of media, it should be looked at in a way that can reach as many people as possible. So let's look at some examples. I actually got some from my library. This one is one of my favorite Christian movies. This one is actually the first attempt by the same studio that made this, as well as these other movies right here: War Room, Courageous, and Fireproof. And these are, this studio is Sherwood Pictures, run out of Sherwood Baptist in Georgia, and it's run by the Kendrick brothers. Now, I have no problem with these movies. I think they're great movies. But just like with another movie that has come out that has gotten a lot of buzz, God's Not Dead, I think that those movies definitely market to a certain demographic. And that, fortunately, is my demographic. But I can definitely see why many people would not want to go and see this, for the same reason that those same people wouldn't want to go to a church. And it's because they know that they're going to be preached at. And not only preached at, but I think that subtlety is the key in this game. And when it comes to film, you can be really powerful without outright telling your idea. I've often heard it said that movies are what you show versus what you tell. Great movies are that way anyway. And I think that that's a statement that the Christian movie genre can learn from, because oftentimes what you'll see is that they'll have to outright state what the message is so that you can be sure to get it. But I think in doing that, they cripple their own message, because nobody likes to get hit over the head with something. Now, to draw a contrast, I'm going to go to a movie that I don't really like, a movie that I really haven't been able to sit through in one sitting, and yet it is one of the most popular movies that has ever been released. It's actually at the top of the box office of all time, and that is the movie, I think it's at the box office of all time. It's either that or Titanic. And I'm talking, of course, about the movie Avatar. Now, the movie Avatar, the reason why it's so successful, I don't like it because I think the story is a little weak. But regardless of the fact that the story is weak, the reason why it's so successful is that it presents the idea in a subtle way where it doesn't really scream at you what the message is. It comes close, but it never outright screams at you what the message is. And it works to its advantage. And the proof comes in the fact that it's one of the highest grossing films of all time, meaning a bunch of people will have had to have gone to see this movie. Now, I think that there's a few things that Christian filmmakers can learn from a movie like Avatar. And I'm using Avatar just as an example because that's the one that comes to my head. And it's a good example because it's the highest grossing film of all time. And it deals with something which a lot of people view as propaganda. Now, I'm not saying religion is propaganda. Jesus is real to me, and he is, you know, he's real to me. It's not something that is just, you know, like POWs in a war camp watching a movie. It's not about that. It's something real. And I think that the problem lies in the fact that Christian filmmakers, they want to validate Christians more than they want to show real Christianity. And I think that that hurts Christian movies in general, because what we're often presented with are these characters that are flawless human beings. They never make a mistake. I was watching a video about this very topic, but using God's Not Dead as its, you know, the jumping off point of Christian movies. And the protagonist there, named Joss Whedon, yeah, Joss Whedon, you can be more original than that. Joss Whedon, director of Avengers, yeah. He never makes a mistake, and he never struggles with this thing that is, he may fail this class because he's going to go up against the teacher and debate the teacher. He's, yeah, okay, he has 5 minutes of struggle, but this is something that is heavy. That's something that, you know, being a college student and being faced with the reality that you're going to throw away money to do what's right, that is a powerful decision. And the movie just glosses over it in favor of the debate sessions, which are great. Don't get me wrong, they're great. But every character in this movie is a cliche. Every single character in this movie is a cliche. And the same can be said for a lot of the Christian movies nowadays. They, instead of giving real, nuanced human beings, give cliches. And nobody wants to go see a movie full of cliches, especially when you've seen them over and over and over and over again. And every Christian movie is, not every Christian movie, because there are some good ones, and I'm going to note them in a few minutes. Almost every Christian movie is just those cliches. The lost person, who of course has to be, you know, like just the lowest of the low. And then the Christian, who is this superhuman being that never makes mistakes. I once saw a sermon, and I actually listened to it on the internet. It's called The Myth of the Super Christian. And I think that just the title spoke volumes to me, and I think that's why I tuned in to hear it. Because we have a very bad view of Christianity if we present our characters that are supposed to be representing ourselves in movies as perfect beings. We're not perfect beings. The Bible tells us that we are all flawed human beings going through this time of spiritual growth as we're going through this world. We're not human beings that just, you know, they live their lives, don't make mistakes. That is bad theology, and that is easily seen through by anybody with half a brain. So it's no wonder to me that these movies can't reach people. They can't really reach people beyond Christian people, because they're presenting you with these archetypes, but they're not really archetypes. They're just cliches that are easily seen through. And I think that these movies are meant more to, like I said, validate Christianity than, and not even validate real Christianity, validate a false and a hollow Christianity, rather than showing Christians as they are. And Christians struggle. Christians, you know, they struggle with things just like normal people. The difference lies in this: we have Jesus Christ, and it's the power of Jesus Christ that gets us through those problems. The Bible tells us that God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. That speaks volumes, but that does not translate into you being a super Christian, because you still have to fully depend on God, the one who's given you that spirit of power, that spirit of love, and that spirit of just, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Everybody everywhere takes that verse for granted, misreads that verse, and there is no greater falsehood perpetrated against that verse than Christian movies. Because Christian movies, and I'm not saying they all do this, most of them, they present these just flawless characters that they're not going to reach anybody. Now, I want to turn you to what I consider to be one of the high water marks of film. I'm actually going to show you two. Both of these are really well known, and both deal with biblical subject matter, but they do it in such a way that they don't shy away from the reality of these characters. The first one I'm going to mention, the idea for this movie came by way of the great Steven Spielberg, who was one of the heads of the company that made this movie. Now, if you can't guess it, I'm going to show you what the movie is. And as soon as you see it, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, yes, Prince of Egypt. This movie, this is my cousin's favorite movie. I don't know why it hasn't gotten a Blu-ray release yet, because this movie needs to be on Blu-ray ASAP. This movie is grandiose. It is spectacular. And yet at the same time gives a more Christian perspective than Christian movies do. Now, for those of you that, you know, are watching my channel and they go to church, I'm not saying that Moses is a Christian in the way that New Testament Christians are. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is this: they present him as a flawed character, that he doesn't want to do what God has called him to do, and he struggles with that. He makes excuses for, you know, not doing what he's supposed to be doing. And that is a real representation of what we face today as Christians. Because Christians are not just, oh yeah, you know, they're not these hyper spiritual beings that, oh, God says it and I'm going to do it. And there's some people like that, and I applaud them for it. But we struggle with things that God calls us to do. And I love the scene in specific. I brought this movie out because I wanted to talk about the scene that is Moses talking to the burning bush. Because in that scene, we see Moses make excuses for not wanting to lead the people of Israel and not wanting to go before the Pharaoh. And he says to God, I wouldn't know what to say. You know, and it's straight out of the scriptures. And it's presented without any kind of polishing and just real human interaction. Faced with God, but a real human interaction. Behaving as a real human would. Moses was a stutterer in the Bible, in real life. He was a stutterer. He didn't speak well. As far as, you know, as he was concerned, he didn't speak well. And he, instead of thinking, oh, I got this because, yeah, God, yes. He at that moment saw his flawed humanity and struggled with this calling that had been placed upon his life. That is real human interaction, a real human character presented on film, and a real representation of what Christians go through, because we do things we should do things where it's a lot of prayer behind them, and they're not just snap decisions of yes, yes. We don't do that. That's not what Christianity is about. And I want to present another film to you about the most influential human, and that was fully God, fully man, Jesus Christ. And that's The Passion of the Christ. Now, this movie has its flaws, just like this movie has its flaws. They're movies. They're not perfect representations of Scripture. But I love seeing on film the scene with Jesus at Gethsemane. Because to see the agony of Christ that was fully presented in the Scripture, specifically in the book of John, to see that live and to see that as it was presented there on film, that Jesus was, he said, "Your will be done, Father," but at the same time, his humanity in him was struggling with this choice. And it was a beautiful, beautiful thing to see, because that's what Christianity is. It's not perfection. And if it ever is presented as perfection, then it is a lie. It is real. And I think that if we break through the false notions that we've made about ourselves, we can reach a lot more people. And I think that transcends just its application to film. I think that that transcends into reaching people in general with the gospel, which is what these movies should be doing. We're not perfect human beings, but we have someone who is, and that's Jesus Christ. And if we could present that on screen through characters, through good cinematography, through good filmmaking, as the kids from Super 8 would say, wow, what's the word that they say? Production value. We could be doing with these movies just tremendous things. And I've often thought about writing a Christian movie, and I think I will be doing that here pretty soon. If not only to present Christianity as it should be, not as this perfect life that never experiences any turmoil, but as realistic living of somebody that has to depend on Christ. And whenever they look at their flawed humanity, they're like Peter going out onto the boat, going out off the boat, walking towards Jesus on the water. And as soon as he took his eyes off of Jesus and he started looking at the waves and the storm, he sank. That's real life. And that's, I think, what Christian movies should be. That's how powerful I think they could be. So, that's really all I have to say on the topic. I mean, I could belabor the point, but what's the point of that? Since I'm kind of talking against doing just that. So, I'd love to hear what you have to say in the comments. This is a really special subject matter for me. And I think that there's a lot of work to be done. Good work has been done, but there's still a lot of work to be done. This has been Movie Critic Rob with the Movie Channel, and as always now, signing off.